launched on the 3rd of October. And on that day, BTCC was at $3. So today it is December the 7th. And the price of BTCC today is flickering between sort of 79 and 80. So let's go with $79. So if you calculate between the 3rd of October and now, the price of BTCC has been increasing on average $1 a day. It's not exactly $1, but it's not far off. It's very close to $1 every single day in that time. So that's our growth. Now, some basics about the miners. So, B fuel first. So B fuel, the price of B fuel is 0.0125. And that number is constant. The price of B fuel will always be 0.0125. That will never change. Now the miners. The Xeon 1X costs $3 a day to run. The Xeon 10X costs $30 a day to run. And the Xeon 100X costs $300 a day to run. And that will never change. One Xeon 100X, one Xeon 10X, one Xeon 1X costs $3 a day to run, $30 a day to run, and $300 a day to run. That does not change. That's a constant along with B fuel. Okay, so now let's look at some basic maths of the calculation. So if you wanted to calculate a part of BTCC, because you're not always going to be sending somebody one BTCC. Sometimes you're going to be sending somebody 0.1 or 0.25 or 0.01. And you need to know what the value of that is to send to somebody. Because as the price of BTCC increases, then the small amount of BTCC that you have sent to somebody is worth more money. So when you're sending somebody BTCC and you're sending somebody, say, 0.001, it seems like nothing. But of course, if BTCC goes up to $1,000, that 0.01 could be worth quite a lot of money. So it's really important that you understand how to calculate a part of BTCC. So what this is how to calculate BTCC fraction values. So this is the maths for it. So if you take, and this is also important so that when you're looking on your DApp, if you've mined a quarter of a BTCC, that you know what that's worth, okay? And you can calculate it so that you can see, because on the DApp it shows you what your mined BTCC is worth, but you're trusting the DApp to be accurate. So you can make the calculation yourself to see if it's accurate. So if you start with your mined, actually, let's move that down here. Mined BTCC. So let's say you're either sending somebody or you've already mined a part of a BTCC. And let's say that is 0.25. So that's a quarter of a BTCC. If you multiply that by the current value of BTCC. So today's current value is 78. But actually what I've written down here was when BTCC was at 77. So I'm going to carry on with those numbers. Okay. So let's say BTCC is worth, one whole BTCC is worth $77. So you calculate, you multiply the part of the BTCC that you've mined by today's value. So 0.25 BTCC by current value. So if you do that multiplication, you'll see that this number here, a quarter of a BTCC, is worth $19.25. Okay. Now you can see if that's correct, because if you do it the other way, if you divide 77 by 4, it will come to exactly that number. So you can verify that you've done that correctly. Okay. Now, if you want to do the multiplication in the other direction, so let's say that you're sending somebody, you want to send somebody $20 worth of BTCC, because nobody's going to come to you and say, can you send me a quarter of a BTCC, or can you send me 0.01 BTCC? What they're going to do is they're going to ask you, can you send me $10 worth of BTCC or $20 of BTCC? So what you do is you take the dollar amount. I've spelled that wrong. So there you go. You take the dollar amount. So let's say in this case, we'll go with $20. And you divide by the current value, which again is $77. Okay. And if you do that calculation, you'll see that it comes to 0.025. And you can verify that on the calculator, because if you do 20 divide 77, gives you 0.25 and some fractions. I'm not including the fractions. Okay. So that's how you calculate the value of parts of a BTCC, or how to calculate how much BTCC to send in order to fulfill a certain dollar amount. Now, the next thing is something that's not talked about very often in our community, but it's something that's talked about all the time in the crypto space, and that is dollar cost averaging. And dollar cost averaging is the average cost of every coin or token that you've bought over a period of time at the varying prices. So if you've bought today, let's say you bought, let's say XRP, for example. If you bought XRP today at $1 and you bought XRP tomorrow at $2 and the next day at $3 and the next day at $4, you're buying it at incrementally higher prices. But when you've bought, let's say $100 worth, if you average that out over the amount of XRP that you've purchased, that gives you the dollar cost average of each coin. So to show you that, and to give you a really simple example. So let's say, for example, I buy 10 iPhones. And let's say iPhone number 1, and I pay $1. All right. Let's say I now go and buy, this is one, right? So let's say I now go and buy another 9 iPhones. Okay. So I've now bought another 9 iPhones. But let's say for these 9, I pay $5 each. Okay. So this iPhone costs me $1. These 9 iPhones cost me $45. So that means that now in total, I've spent $46. So now if I divide 46 by 10, that gives me a dollar cost average of $4.60. So hopefully that will help you to understand what dollar cost averaging is. And that's how you can calculate, because when you're buying crypto, and this is going to be true of BTCC, because at some point you may choose to start buying BTCC on the open markets as well as mining it, because there is going to be volatility, I'm sure, once we go on the exchanges. So there's going to be good opportunities to buy it as well. So you're going to want to know how much you've spent, not only in total, but how much you've paid for each BTCC or each Solana or each XRP, whatever coin it is that you're buying or token that you're buying. You need to know what the dollar cost average is of what you've purchased. Okay, so now we're going to look at the partial harvesting. All right, now, so the partial harvesting strategy, you can achieve pretty much the same results as with the multi multiple account strategy using the harvesting strategy. But there are a few differences. So if you're going to use the partial harvesting strategy, this is all the information you need for that. First of all, the important thing to remember is that when you're partially harvesting, you can partial harvest anything from 1% up to 100%. So the smallest amount that you can harvest is 1% of whatever it is that you've already mined. And the maximum is obviously all of it, which is 100%. Okay. Now, when you're partially harvesting, if you're going to use this strategy, then you're going to need two accounts. You're going to need, let me rephrase that. You're going to need one extra account because you've got your existing account, which you can call your current account. And then you're going to need an extra account that you can call your savings account. Now, there's two ways in which you can do partial harvesting, or that you can figure your partial harvesting. The first way, option one, is you can harvest based on your B fuel amount. So if you've got 24,000 in B fuel costs, you could harvest 10% of it from that perspective. So that would be 2,400. So let's say you've got 24,000 in B fuel costs. You just decide, well, I'm going to divide that by 10. So I'm going to harvest 10% of that, which is 2,400. And then you'll calculate how much that is in dollar amount. And the way that you do that is if you take your B fuel amount that you're going to harvest, 2,400, and you times that by 0.0125. And I can do that very quickly. So 2,400 times 0.0125 equals $30. So that's how you calculate your B fuel costs. So if you're looking at the B fuel and think, well, I'm going to harvest 10% of my B fuel costs, and that will give you $30. Your second option, option two, you harvest based on the dollar amount. So what you can do is on a daily basis, you can say to yourself, right, I want to spend no more than $100 a day or $100 a month. So if you've only got one Xeon 1X, one Xeon 1X miner, that's costing you $3 a day to run. So there's no point harvesting on a daily basis at $3. You may as well wait and do it at the end of the week, because after 7 days, that's $21. So you could choose to do that weekly or monthly, but you could still do it weekly at the end of the month. So if you wait until the end of the month, because of partial harvesting, you could still harvest to the value of $21 because of partial harvesting. So basically, you just set yourself, right, I want to harvest at $50 regularly, and you can decide whether that's daily, weekly, or monthly. I want to spend this much money per month, per week, or whatever. So the next step is to then calculate what that B fuel amount is going to be to match that dollar amount. So again, let's say $30, right? I want to harvest, I don't want to spend more than $30 a day. So I need to watch my B fuel amount to see when it gets to that amount. So if you're going to be doing it daily, then you know, if you divide this, sorry, just had to quickly check. If you divide this by 0.0125, that will equal 2,400. So now, you know, if you're doing this on a daily basis, you are looking for your figure to be 2,400 and above. Okay, because once it hits 2,600, 2,700, 2,800, 3,000, 3,200, you can still harvest at 2,400 by partially harvesting. So then on the sliding scale, which I'm going to show you in a minute, you can then slide the scale down to meet that value of B fuel. All right. Now, the two options are basically the same, but if you've got a lot of B fuel, then it's easier to just look, right, well, I've got that much B fuel. I can, you can calculate what 10% of that is, and then you can figure out what the dollar amount is. So, I mean, there's not a lot of difference, but it's just really thinking about it in a slightly different way. Right, let's look at it from option one point of view. All right, so let's say you're going to partial harvest 10%. All right, so BTCC, your mine BTCC is, for example, on one of mine is 32. I've got 32 BTCC. My B fuel costs on that is 101,934. So this dollar amount, based on $77, I know it's higher today, but I wrote this all out a few days ago. So that is 2,464. Again, I'm not including the fractionals. Okay, so the value of my BTCC is 2,464. The dollar value of my B fuel is 1,274. Okay, so you can see I've got quite a profit there already. As BTCC continues to go up, that profit will be up. Now, remember, on this example, this is a static number. But in reality, in your account, these numbers are changing constantly. You're not using multiple accounts and freezing anything. You're using an existing account that is currently mining. So this B fuel number is changing constantly. So if you choose not to harvest today, then if you harvest tomorrow, the numbers are going to be different. Even if you harvest in half an hour, the numbers are going to be different. So remember, as I'm doing this example, I'm using static numbers. So this is literally just to help you to figure out the calculation. Okay. So let's say I now go to harvest 10% of that. So if I'm going to harvest 10% of my B fuel, which is 10193.4. That's 10% of my B fuel. Okay. So now I can figure out how much that would be. If I'm not looking for a set amount, I'm just looking, well, I want to harvest 10% of my B fuel. I can now work out 10193.4 times 0.0125. So that now works out a dollar amount, $127.40. So I'm going to harvest 10% of my B fuel, which I now know I need to find $127.40. And I know that that's going to give me 3.2 BTCC into my MetaMask. All right. So that's a very simple calculation. So I look at what my total B fuel is. I calculate what the dollar amount is. I then divide that by 10, gives me 10%. So now I've got $127.40 that I need to find. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, this is where your accounts come into play. Now, the 3.2 will go directly into your MetaMask in your current account. That goes into your current account. Now, what you can do is you can move, say, 10% of it. It's up to you how much. You can decide whether you want to move 50% of it, 10% of it, 20% of it. So this is in your current account. And what you do is you now move this, and I'm going to go with 10%, into your savings account. So now in your current account, you will have 2.88 BTCC left. And in your savings account, so in here you've got 0.32. 10% of that is 0.32. So this 0.32 is worth 27 $24. $24. Okay, so your 0.32 is worth $24, and your 2.88 is worth $221. Okay, so in your savings account, you've got $24 worth of BTCC. In your current account, you've got $221. So you could put a bit more over if you wish to. Again, as I say, the amount is up to you. So now you've got this saved. This is now in a separate account. It's no longer subject to any B fuel costs, nor is this. But this money can now be used to buy B fuel. And then you just repeat the whole process. You harvest the percentage of your BTCC according to the B fuel amount. And then you move 10% of it or 20% of it across into your savings account. And then you use what you've got left to do another harvest the next day or the next week. And that's it. That's very simple. There's really nothing complicated about that. Hopefully that makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of stuff to process. I'm trying to make sure I'm putting it down clearly. And I really hope that this is being clear for everybody. If you've got difficulty, if it doesn't make sense, let me know. I will redo the video in a hopefully better if that's necessary. Okay, so now let's look at option 2. So now you're doing exactly the same thing, but instead of harvesting according to the 10% of your B fuel costs, in your mind, you're budgeting yourself a set dollar amount. So option 2 is a set dollar amount. Okay. Again, you're going to have your current account, which is your existing account that's currently mining, and you're going to have your savings account. Now, I'm going to use this based on the Xeon 10X because it just gives me bigger numbers to be able to play with. So your Xeon 10X is costing you $30 a day. Okay. So your B fuel costs are $2,400. That, if you times that over the month, you're looking at approximately $900 per month. And your B fuel costs then are $72,000. All right. So a Xeon 10X is costing you $30 a day, $900 a month, give or take, because some months have got 30 days, some months have got 31 days, and at least one month has got 28 or 29. So your B fuel costs are $7,200. So let's say the fixed amount that you want to harvest, the fixed amount in your mind you're budgeting for is $200 a month, regardless of whatever it is, because this cost is never going to change. You've got one Xeon 10X, it will cost you $30 a day, regardless. So that's $900 a month. But you don't want to spend $900 a month. You only want to spend $200 a month. So you will harvest to $200 a month. So the first thing is to be able to calculate how much B fuel you'll need to buy. So 200 divide 0.0125, let me do that here, equals 16,000. Yes, 16,000. Sorry, just thought I'd double check. So 16. So you know that you need to buy 16,000 B fuel a month. If you've got 32, give me one sec. So if you're spending $200 a month, now I don't know how much BTCC that's going to mine. I don't have the calculation for that. That's on David's spreadsheet. This is not supposed to be a complicated thing. So I'm not going into heavily detailed numbers. This is purely for the purposes of the harvesting process. So let's say you've harvested 2.6 BTCC. And now you're doing exactly the same as you did in option 1. So 2.6 BTCC now goes directly into your current account. And then what you do is you now convert transfer 10% of that into your savings account. And again, these percentages are up to you to calculate for yourself what's best for you, which means that now leaves you in your current account 2.34 BTCC. And in your savings account, you've now got 0.26. And the value of that, based on the 177, is $180. And the value of this is $20. Now you're following the same process. Now, this money here, you can use to buy bee fuel and harvest again, because now you've got nearly $200. So you could just harvest, so you've got a bit more. I mean, if bee fuel, it goes up in price, which it already has, then this will be worth more than $180. So now you've got $200 in BTCC ready to be able to harvest again at the end of next month. And what's good is that between now, if you keep this as BTCC in this account until the end of the month, remember it's going up on average $1 a day, which means this will be worth $30 more. But so will this. This will be now worth $50. But this is your savings. You're keeping this and you're allowing and slowly accumulating BTCC that you're not touching. This is what you're going to use to harvest. So if you wait till the end of the month, this will have gone up another $30 approximately, which means you've now got $210 worth of BTCC. So not only have you made a profit on this BTCC, but you're also buying more bee fuel for your value because it's gone up in price. You see how this is working? So this is your savings account. You're just leaving this to grow. Every time you harvest, you'll transfer 10%, 15% into this account and you don't touch it. You just let the BTCC grow up and you'll be surprised at how soon you'll have 3, 4, 5 BTCC in there, especially if you've got more than one miner. And this can become self-funding. It's just playing the numbers and strategizing. This can become self-funding. You may still need to add a few dollars here and there into this, but you've got options for that. If you're team building, you're going to earn through the affiliate program. You're going to earn through the Vault Horizon 3% dividend that you get every month. So you can contribute towards this to help boost up your bee fuel. Once you've got this, let's say this goes up, let's say over the course of 2 or 3 months, this goes up to 2, 3 BTCC. You could always take one of these BTCC out and send it back into this account and convert it, because again, in a month from now, it'll be worth $30 more. In 2 months from now, it'll be worth $60 more. In 3 months from now, it'll be $100 more. So even if you take one out and transfer it across to boost this side, the value of what you've got left is still higher than it is at this moment. So this is a strategy that you can use instead of the multiple account strategy. However, there are some things to be taken into account. So this is a list of things to remember. And this is quite an important list. Number 1, the daily cost of bee fuel does not change. Your daily cost of bee fuel does not change. Remember what I said at the beginning. Your 1x miner will cost you $3 a day to run, whatever happens. Your 10x will cost you $30 a day to run, and your 100x will cost you $300 a day to run. That will never, ever change. Number 2, the amount of BTCC mined on a daily basis does change. Remember, there is a maximum of 7,200 coins mined on a daily basis. And that's not per person or per miner. That is a maximum in total. So if there is only one person with one miner mining, and it doesn't matter whether it's a 1x miner or a 100x miner, if there is only one person mining, that person will get all 7,200. If there are 10 people, or let's say 10 miners, if there are 10 miners mining, and let's say they're all of the equivalent power, then all of this is distributed to all 10. So you don't all get 7,200. All 10 of these, if they were of the equivalent value, would get 720 each. If you've got all 1x miners, if all 10 people had a 1x miner, it would be distributed equally. But if you've got some people with a 1x, some people with a 10x, some people with a 100x, then it will be distributed according to the size of the miner. But the point is that it is only 7,200 a day distributed to the entire mining population. So every time there is a new miner on the market, you are getting less BTCC a day, per second, per minute, per hour, per day. And that's why it looks like you're using more B fuel. You're not using more B fuel. The same, your one miner is costing you exactly the same to run. It just costs more B fuel per BTCC mined, but the daily cost of the miner is the same. Hopefully that makes sense. The next thing to remember, you must harvest regularly, because remember, you are constantly mining. So your B fuel is going up. It's increasing. You're not spending more B fuel per miner. The miner costs the same, $3 a day to run, $30 a day, or $300 a day. But as long as you're mining, every day that you're mining, you're accumulating more B fuel costs. So in the case of the 10x, $900 a month. If you've got two of those, that's $1,800 a month. So it's really important to remember to harvest regularly, because remember, if you're harvesting partial harvesting, then the minimum you can harvest is 1%. The higher your B fuel costs, the higher that 1% will be. So let's say, for example, let's say you've got B fuel costs of 100,000. So that in dollar amount is $1,250. If you want to harvest 10% of that, then that is $125. But let's say you forget to harvest for I don't know, a week, for example. Okay. Now, suddenly, if your B fuel goes up to $1 million, now the dollar amount of that is 12,500. And if you plan to harvest 10% of that, you now need to find 1,250. And if you want to harvest 1% of that, and you just move that there, you need to find $125. Now, $125 to harvest 1% doesn't sound like that's too bad. It's all right, I can harvest at 1%. But you're still leaving 99% on the DAP. The other 99% of your B fuel costs is going up. So what happens when it gets to $1.5 million? Suddenly 1% is going to be half as much again. Before you know it, even 1% could end up being $800 or $900, $1,200, $1,500 or more if you forget to harvest, or you leave it not understanding the numbers. Before you know it, even 1% could end up being $2,000 or $3,000. And now you can't harvest. You're going to need to find $2,000, $3,000 just to harvest 1%. So whilst this is a good strategy, it does require much more controlled management. If you look at the dollar amount of this, okay, if your B fuel, we'll give you another example. It's the same thing, but let's give you another example. Okay, so if your B fuel is 200,000, so that equals 2,500, and 10% of that is 20,000, which means that dollar amount is 250. But if you forget and your B fuel goes up to 2 million, now you're looking at 25,000, and just 1% of that is 20,000, which means that is $250. You've doubled. See, now 1%, you need $250. If this goes up to 2.5 million, you've got half as much again. So it's really important to harvest regularly, because otherwise, even at 1%, it's not going to be affordable to harvest. So for me personally, as a personal opinion, I think the multiple account option is much better, because you move your miners to different accounts and your B fuel costs are frozen. And it doesn't matter how long you forget about it for, it will never change. But the value of BTCC does. This is for somebody, this option here, the partial harvesting option, is really for people who are really organized and who can plan and prepare and who are very good at planning and preparing, who are very good at being able to quickly look at the figures and go, right, that's what I need to do, and now I'm ready to harvest. And of course, you've then got to look at making your setting up the same time of day that's convenient, same time every day. Because if you do it today and it's your day off work and you do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you create that habit tomorrow, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you're at work, how are you going to harvest if you're not able to use your phone? So you need to pick a time of day that's going to suit you, that you know you're going to be able to do every day or every week or every month. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. That leaves me to just say, look at that, I can't even spell on closing. It's because the screen's cracked, so it doesn't always work. Thank you for watching. Your support is always appreciated. And as always, please follow me and subscribe to my channel to get updates on any videos that I add. I really hope this was helpful to you, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.